Hey everybody, and welcome to the online book study from Northeast Christian Apologetics. I'm Simon Williams, and today we're talking about Tactics. Going to be talking about Chapter 6 of Tactics by Greg Koukl. And hope you guys are having a great night tonight, and hope that the new year is treating you well. Can't complain myself. I'm pretty happy about how everything's going so far. As you can see on the reels during the startup, you can see that I got two churches that I'm going to be presenting apologetics at, so I'm pretty excited about that. Starting this week is the church in New London. Hope that if you are in Connecticut and in New London County and are able to come out, that you do. That'd be pretty awesome. So we are reading Tactics, continuing with our study of Tactics, and just as a reminder to everyone, it's by Greg Koukl. That's him, and his ministry is Stand to Reason. I highly recommend checking his ministry out. And as always, I like to talk about where you can get the book so you can follow along and have it as a reference for yourself. You can get it on Amazon. Mighty Venus says, "Let's go. Hair looks great." Wow, thanks. I've been doing something different with it lately. So, got Amazon and also christianbooks.com. So yeah, those are the places that you can get the book. I highly recommend getting them. Getting this book. I highly recommend getting all the books that we study on this channel. Just as a reminder, this is like a react kind of channel. Instead of reacting to videos and movies, we react to books, kind of, where I read the book and discuss the content and dive deeper into what's going on there and everything like that. If you haven't already, consider subscribing. Helps out the channel, helps me out. I'm trying to make sure that this information is convenient for everyone, so that people can look at it and learn at their leisure. This is really good stuff, So I'm going to turn that off now so it doesn't pop up when I come back to this screen. But we're on Chapter 6, which is titled Two Reliable Rescues. And the previous chapters have been Koukl introducing us to the Columbo Tactic. Step 1, which is what do you mean by that? Step 2, what reasons do you have for believing that? And there's a lot of ways that you can ask this question, And then last week we talked about, we went into more detail about that kind of stuff. But this week we're going to be talking about two reliable rescues. And don't hesitate to ask questions along the way. Just because I'm reading doesn't mean that you can't ask questions in the chat. I can respond to them when I see them and everything. And also just remember that there's a little bit of a delay from when I talk to when you see it and to when I see your comments. So don't get discouraged if I don't address it right away. But without further ado, let's jump into Chapter 6. Let's swap over to the reading screen. All right. So I hope you guys are ready for this. All right. So Koukl starts off Chapter 6, Two Reliable Rescues, with your first two Columbo questions are vital to keeping you in the driver's seat while your tactical game plan unfolds. They can also be handy, though, to get you out of tight spots you may get maneuvered into. You might find yourself in two specific circumstances in which you are awkwardly on the defensive, with the other person in the driver's seat taking you places you did not intend to go and were not prepared to handle. I call these situations the professor's ploy and get out of the hot seat. When you find yourself with your back against the wall, how do you turn the tables, regain your balance, and steer the conversation in a more profitable direction? In both cases, Lieutenant Columbo comes to your rescue. The professor's ploy. I mentioned earlier that the Columbo Tactic is a good one to use in the workplace. It's also a good one to use in the classroom, but there is a potential pitfall. Some professors are on a crusade to crush the confidence of any Christian who wanders into their lecture hall, and they're not afraid to admit it. One student told me that on the first day of class, his professor asked all the Christians to raise their hands. With a sniff, he said, "You won't be Christians when I get through with you." Professors like this one are fond of using their bully pulpit to bully Christians, taking pot shots at them every chance they get. The Bible is just a bunch of fables and fairy tales, they might say, even if the class has nothing to do with religious issues. Some well-meaning believers won't take this lying down. They'll raise their hand, take up the challenge, and attempt a head-to-head duel with the professor. Don't make this mistake. It's right-hearted but wrong-headed. The approach rarely works because it violates a fundamental rule of engagement. Never make a frontal assault on a superior force in an entrenched position. An unwritten law of nature seems to govern exchanges like these. The man with a microphone wins. The professor always has the strategic advantage, and he knows it. It's foolish to get into a power struggle when you're outgunned. This is very true. I don't know what it is about speaking in front of people, but it empowers you somehow. You know, like I speak in front of people when I teach apologetics at churches and stuff like that. And sometimes I'm surprised at the amount of things I actually remember while I'm in front of those people, because oftentimes when I'm having conversations with somebody one-on-one, I'll forget things. I can't keep ideas as crystal in my head as I can, but when you're standing in front of people, you seem to have some sort of it becomes easier somehow. So Koukl continues, there's a better way. Don't disengage. Instead, use your tactics. Raise your hand and ask a question. For starters, you might ask, Professor, can you give us a little more detail on what you mean? What kind of fable are you talking about? And do you think nothing in the Bible, in the biblical documents, has any historical value? Is everything in the book a fanciful invention of some sort? What's your opinion? Notice that these are all creative variations of our first Columbo question. What do you mean by that? Hi, Holly. Welcome to the stream. So this is a good way to address the issue. Ask for more information. Don't try to attack the person head on or rebut them. Don't try to rebut them. You know, ask questions. You are in the audience, and you're supposed to just ask questions. Anyway, especially in a lecture kind of situation. So let the professor explain himself. As a good student, listen carefully to his response. Take notes. Ask further clarification questions if necessary. If he falters in any way, the other students will notice. If he has trouble making his ideas clear, it will become obvious he's not thought carefully about his challenge. Another thing I wanted to mention is that, especially with this kind of idea that the Bible is fables and fairy tales, this is why it's important to kind of bone up on the historicity of the Bible. If the Bible is nothing but a bunch of fairy tales, then you would expect it to perform about as well as the Book of Mormon. You know, where the Book of Mormon lists things that are impossible, like the existence of horses in the Americas before we introduced them, or things like cities that don't actually exist, stuff like that. So with regard to the Bible, it's always mentioning things, animals that do exist, places that do exist, names of people that are common for the area, and also distinguishing people that bear the same name. So the Bible holds up extremely well, and this has been coming up in my life a lot lately, and I highly recommend Capturing Christianity's latest video series called The Historical Tell, and they do a fantastic job of talking about the reliability of the Gospel of Luke. Well, the writer of Luke Acts in particular. And I'm actually doing a personal study on Luke as well. And I can tell you, it's a very good book. Mighty Venus says, when you are in front of a crowd, people perceive you as a subject matter expert. So maybe your brain is just living up to the expectation. Yeah, maybe. You know, you do have the have the expectation of your audience that you're a subject matter expert, and maybe that does lend some strength to you. We are living in a spiritual world, and some people neglect that aspect of reality, but you can definitely become empowered by the people around you. Okay, so moving on. When you're satisfied you have a clear take on his view, raise your hand again and ask him how he came to his conclusions. So remember, he's going through the Columbo Tactics here. Okay, the first one was, what do you mean by that? And now he's asking for justification for these beliefs, So ask him to explain the line of evidence that convinced him not to take seriously anything in those ancient records. Make the teacher, the one making the claim, shoulder the burden of proof for his assertions. This allows you to stay engaged while deftly sidestepping the power struggle. Your interactions may go smoothly. Then again, the professor might suspect you're a Christian carefully sandbagging to gain an advantage by maneuvering with questions to make a point, which would be true. If he does, he might try to turn the tables by calling you out, using a distractive ploy to derail your efforts. This is the pitfall I warned about. You must be one of those fundamentalist Christians, he might say, who thinks the Bible is the inspired word of God, every jot and tittle. Looking at his watch, he continues, okay, I'm a fair man. I have a little extra time. Why don't you stand up and explain to the rest of the class why you think the Bible is not a bunch of fables, but rather the infallible word of God? Go ahead. Think for a moment about what the professor has just done. In one quick move, he has cleverly shifted the burden of proof onto you, the student. This is illicit, as you now know, since you have not made any claim. He is the one advancing a view. It's up to him to defend it. He's the teacher, after all. So do not take the bait. Falling into this trap is nearly always fatal. The professor is trying to get you to do his job. Don't let it happen. Instead, when you find yourself facing any form of you prove me wrong challenge, politely shift the burden back where it belongs, on the person who made the claim. Well, professor, you might say, you don't know my view since I haven't offered it. For all you know, I'm on your side. More to the point, my view is irrelevant. It doesn't really matter what I believe. Your ideas are on the table here, not mine. I'm just a student trying to learn. You're the instructor. All I'm doing is asking for clarification of your ideas and wondering whether you have good reasons for them. If he gives an answer, thank him for explaining himself and either ask another question or let it go for the time being. You've done the best you can under the circumstances. The burden of the professor's ploy is the attempt any person makes to shift the burden of proof for his claim onto someone else. The professor, in this case, demands that students defend views they have not expressed, sidestepping his own responsibility to give an account for his beliefs. Do not be afraid to question your professors. Challenge them on your terms, though not theirs, and do it with grace, respect, and tact. You do not have to be the expert on every subject. You don't have to have all the answers. You can still be effective even when you know very little if you ask the right questions. Whenever anyone, professor or otherwise, makes a controversial claim and then says, you prove me wrong, don't play their game. This reminds me of Louder with Crowder, where he would go to campuses and say something about illegal immigration, say, prove me wrong. So whenever anyone, professor or otherwise, makes a controversial claim and then says, you prove me wrong, don't play their game. Do not let them make you do the work they should be doing. If you keep the burden of proof on the person making the claim, it takes the pressure off you, but still allows you to direct the conversation. Note this important principle. You are in control of your side of the conversation. You don't have to allow yourself to be dragged into a compromising position you do not want to be in. Don't be nasty or defensive, but don't allow yourself to be bullied. When you stay in question mode, you're in the safe zone. So get out of the hot seat. There is a second tough situation that your first two Columbo questions can help you manage. Sometimes you'll be in persuasion mode in a conversation, only to discover you're facing an aggressive challenger you are not equipped to handle. Maybe the other person knows more about the issue than you do. Maybe you're not quick enough on your feet to keep up with a fast talker in an intense discussion. In any case, You're out of your depth and you know it. You're in the hot seat. It's not a pleasant place to be. I want to teach you a move that will get you out. Before I do, though, I want to ask you a question. When you find yourself overwhelmed by the flow of information coming at you or outmaneuvered by a clever challenger who is in the driver's seat of the conversation at that moment, who is in the driver's seat at that moment? Not you, that's for sure, which is why you feel so uncomfortable. In this situation, the tactical approach really shines. Columbo questions can help you manage the conversation even when you're outmatched and in over your head. They enable you to maneuver out of an awkward circumstance someone else has steered you into and buy yourself some thinking time. When you're in the hot seat, forget about trying to answer the challenges offered or respond to the points made. You already know you're not up to the task. Instead, use the other person's energy to your advantage by practicing a little of what I call a conversational Aikido. Aikido is a clever approach to self-defense that uses an opponent's forward inertia to your advantage. In this situation, that means letting them talk, but directing your efforts in a way that nullifies the attack and benefits you. Here's how it works. When you feel overmatched and overwhelmed in a conversation, immediately shift from persuasion mode to act-finding mode. Don't continue to argue your case. Instead, using your first two Columbo questions, become a student of the other person's view by asking for clarification and for reasons. Say something like this. Boy, it sounds like you know a lot more about this than I do, and you've raised some interesting points. My problem is that this is all new information for me. I wonder if you could do me a favor. I really want to understand your points, but you need to slow down a bit so I get them right. Would you take a moment to carefully explain your view and also your reasons for it to help me understand better? When you respond this way, it buys you valuable time. It also shows that you're not afraid of the other person and you're interested in taking his view seriously. So make sure you understand the ideas. Write them down if you need to when all your questions have been answered, and the conversation by saying these magic words. Thanks. Now let me think about it. Maybe we can talk more later. This is incredibly important, you know, like I've definitely had to use this in the past as well. You know, like there are times in which you're in a conversation and you're like, wow, I haven't really considered this before. Let me think about it. Excuse me 1 second. All right, so talk about that more later. Mighty Venus says, "Changing My Mind was a good series." It was a good series, and it should be able to demonstrate to you the power of that tactic, where you just state your claim and then shift the burden of proof to the person who disagrees with you. You're asking them to change your mind, you know, without in that beginning of the conversation, without justifying your claims. You're having them just take on the burden of proof right away. It's very clever, you know, and then all you have to do is start using the Columbo tactic and just make a fool of them, you know. Like that's what Crowder is doing. And like I said in previous videos coming up to this, you know, like these tactics are powerful, and you are able to use them to make a fool of somebody. But I highly recommend you not do that. You know, we're supposed to be engaging in good faith. So, all right. So here we go. All right. So these words, now let me think about it, are like magic, because once you say them, you free yourself from any obligation to respond further at the moment. All the pressure is gone since you've already pleaded ignorance. You have no obligation to answer, refute, or reply once you've admitted you're outgunned and need to give the issue more thought. Now, who is in the driver's seat? You are, of course. You're relaxed and listening, a student, not a challenger. You have deftly but graciously turned the tables. You have sidestepped a challenge you cannot answer and refute or defuse the confrontation. The pressure is off and you're still engaged. Think for a moment how useful this approach can be. Instead of trying to resist the force of another's attack, you step aside and let her have the floor. You invite her to make her case slowly and clearly so you'll have an opportunity to fully understand her point. What do you do next? You do what you said you were going to do. You think about it. Do your homework on your own at your leisure when the pressure is off. Research the issue, maybe even enlisting others in the process, and come back better prepared next time. You might even want to start a notebook. Open a computer file and record the questions and its details from your notes. Then begin to craft a response based on your research. Review what you've written. Rehearse your response out loud a few times or role play it with a friend. In your discussion, if your discussion was part of a chance meeting, you may not be able to revisit the topic with the same person, but when the issue comes up with someone else, you'll be ready. You'll own that question. Yeah, and I totally agree with this. I have a lot of notes on my phone and on my computer of topics that caught me off guard and things that I needed to study myself. When you, it's very helpful to not only read up on the topic, but write notes about the topic and also discuss it with people in person and even online, people that you trust. There's something about writing it out that really helps, especially with pen and paper. But, most of us have been to college and school and have learned to study in that way. So anyway, when you face a new challenge, start another entry and go through the same steps. You will be surprised how soon your expanding notebook will cover the basic issues. There aren't that many. The key here is to get out of the hot seat but still stay engaged. Your maneuver deftly shifts control of the conversation back to you while shifting the spotlight and the pressure back on him. It's not retreat. It's just a different type of engagement. It greatly reduces your anxiety level, strengthens your confidence, and gives you an education so that you can be more effective next time around. If you take this approach, no egos are at stake, so there are no losers. You're simply asking for the more aggressive person to give you his best shot. Essentially, you're inviting him to do what he wanted to do in the first place, beat you up. You're just giving him the opportunity to do a complete job. So, let me ask you a question. Is there any Christian you know, even the most retiring, shy, bashful, timid, or reserved, who is unable to do this? Is there anyone who can not say, you want to beat me up? Okay, just do it slowly and thoroughly, please. Anyone can do this. It's easy. There's little technique. This little technique enables even the most skittish Christian to tame a tyrant. So it's also important to make sure that you are, this tactic works best if you're already engaging the person in good faith and with a calm and patient demeanor. Even when you have a calm and patient demeanor, people can become aggressive with you. And what you just need to do is just persevere through it and learn to turn the other cheek, be patient and love your enemy, So keep that in mind. It's a lot easier to administer this tactic when you discover that, okay, yes, this person is more knowledgeable in this area, when you have already demonstrated that you are a kind person, okay? This is something that we need to practice as Christians anyway. So, narrating the debate. I'll finish this chapter by offering a tip. It's a simple way to bring clarity to a discussion or pull the curtain back on someone who is illicitly dodging your point or distorting the argument in some way. Many people you talk to will struggle when you turn the tables by asking them to give evidence for their claims or by using questions to expose their bad thinking. When a person has not thought much about his assertions, avoiding your questions may be his only recourse. He may try to change the subject or reassert his point in other ways. When this happens, it may be helpful for you to narrate the debate. Take a moment to step outside the conversation in a sense and describe to your friend the turn the discussion has just taken. This will help him and others listening to see how he's gotten off course. You can say something like this: I want you to notice the turn our talk just took. First, you made a fairly controversial statement, and I asked you a couple of questions about it. So far, you haven't answered them. Instead, you've taken off in another direction. Before we move on to a new topic, would it be okay with you if we finish the old one? I really am interested in your response. Sometimes, though, there's a different problem. The person you're talking with may not be interested in truth at all. Instead, he's maneuvering for a score in an intellectual jousting match, especially if others are listening. He's substituting slick rhetoric and subtle distractions or distortions for intelligent points. If you're alert, you might catch him in his verbal sleight of hand and gracefully call him out. Call him on it. Here's an example of calmly narrating a common ad hominem attempt in a discussion about religious pluralism. Did you notice what just happened? I raised a question about the legitimacy of your idea that all religions lead to God, and you responded by calling me a name, a bigot to be precise. You changed the subject. We were talking about an issue, and then you attacked my character. Why did you do that? During a radio conversation with a popular internet atheist, the atheist consistently tried to represent my views in the most unattractive way possible, distorting them so they'd be more vulnerable to his attacks. This, of course, is an example of a straw man fallacy, and I called him on it by narrating his maneuver. I want others to notice what you just did. You asked me a question, and I gave you my answer. You then gave a distorted summary of my view for the listeners. I'm pointing out it was a misrepresentation. Then you said, well, that's the way I interpret your view. So even though you know you got my view wrong, you're still going to cling to your own interpretation. Okay, I just want everyone to be clear on what you're doing. When you're dealing with an evasive or intellectually dishonest person, don't let them get off the hook by dodging the issue or distorting the argument. Narrating the debate helps the other person the debate keeps the other person honest while keeping the conversation cordial, and encouraging him to clarify himself. Call him on any false moves he's made. Forcing him to face the music may be the first step toward a change of mind, either his or that of others listening. When a cherished view is at stake, it's not unusual for people to raise empty protests, objections that sound worthwhile but simply can't be defended once examined. Narrating the debate often exposes a lack of substance behind the bluster. So what we learned this chapter. First, we learned how to deal with the professor's ploy, a common move used by others to sidestep the burden of proof responsibility for their claims. Two important principles guide us here. 1. Do not allow yourself to get caught in a power play when you are overmatched. Instead, use your tactics. 2. Refuse to shoulder the burden of proof when you have not made the claim. Shift the responsibility back where it belongs, on the other person. Don't let a bully put you on the defensive. You're in charge of your side of the conversation. Next, we learned how to use Columbo to get ourselves out of the hot seat. When you find yourself overmatched by a fast talker in an intense discussion, practice a little verbal aikido, and by shifting from argument mode to fact-finding mode. Immediately become a student of the other person's ideas, asking probing clarification questions instead of trying to win your case. Then use the magic phrase, "Let me think about it." Once you understand the other person's point of view, work on the issues later, on your own, at your leisure, when the pressure is off. Finally, I introduce a concept to you that I call narrating the debate. It's a way of summarizing in clear terms the illicit moves the other person in the conversation has made, such as avoiding an issue or offering cleverly worded, deceptive, or distorted reasoning. All right, we finished the chapter. You know what that means? That means we get to celebrate. Woo-woo! Here we go. Yay! We got to the end of the chapter. Congratulations, everybody. Well done. We did it. These chapters are shorter. Though, you know. So these shorter chapters are, it's like, man, did we really deserve the celebration? But I think we did. You know, we got through the whole chapter together. We're up to chapter 7 now. You know, which is called, let's see what it's called real quick. Columbo Step 3, using questions to make a point. All right, so that's what we're going to be talking about next week, not this week. All right. All right, so I hope that you guys got a lot out of this. Dude says great chapter. Yes. Yeah. This is a great chapter. This is a really important stuff to learn. Not just in apologetics conversations or witnessing or things like that. This is great stuff for any kind of conversation. If you are in a political discussion or in a controversial, or talking about controversial things, or even talking about things in which you just disagree philosophically on some stuff, or even video games or whatever, this is great stuff. Dude says that he loves the book so far. This is a great book. Yeah. When I read this book, man, it had to be in 10 years ago or more. Actually, more than that. Maybe not. It's probably been around 9 or 10 years. When I first read this was before. We're reading the 10th anniversary edition now, but this is. I read the previous one, and I got a lot out of it. I thought it was very helpful, especially with me. I'm very timid in person, and I have a tendency to have a difficult time talking to people. Just one second. All right, but I have a tough time talking to people and keeping focus on what the conversations, what's going on in the conversation and things like that. So, but these tactics definitely help, So keep you in the driver's seat and also helping you stay engaged in the conversation and learning. You can really learn a lot from other people, but definitely go home and do the homework yourself. A lot of times people seem like an expert, and then when you read into the material, it is not that case. They are definitely not. So keep that in mind. You can learn a lot, and you can learn a lot of wrong things as well. I've been talking to my brother lately and telling him that sometimes the things that you learn make you dumber. So keep that in mind, when you're having conversations with people. Not everything you learn makes you smarter. And I think that we're in a society right now where there's so much information and people are learning so much stuff, and they're just learning things that are not making them smarter. So we got to keep that in mind ourselves as well when we're talking to people and seeing things on TikTok or YouTube Shorts or even on this, do not hesitate to fact check me as well. Luckily with this program now, you actually get to see the book while I'm reading it and discussing it to you. So there's no it's transparent. You know what I'm saying? So at least there's that. But I hope that you had a good night with me tonight on our book study. Remember, our book study happens every Monday night at 6 p.m. And it's going to be traveling through the Tactics book. And just to let you guys know, there are 19 chapters in this book. So going to be going for a few more months into Tactics, but that's good because, like we said already, we like this book. But thanks a lot, everybody. God bless you, and have a great night. Hey, before you go, I hope you enjoyed today's enlightening discussion during our Christian Apologetics book study. It's always a blessing to come together to explore our faith and grow in our understanding. Your participation means the world to me, and I'm grateful for your continued support of Northeast Christian Apologetics. Remember, you can stay connected with me and access valuable resources by visiting my website at nechristianapologetics.com. There you'll find a wealth of articles, videos, and recommended reading material to deepen your knowledge of Christian apologetics. If you're as passionate as I am about equipping believers to defend their faith and engage in meaningful conversations, you can also support this ministry in various ways. One way to support this work is through patreon.com. By becoming a patron, you'll have access to exclusive content, early access to our discussions, and a chance to connect with like-minded individuals who share your passion for Christian apologetics. If Patreon is not your style, some people prefer to give me a one-time tip. And if you'd like to do that, then feel free to do so through Venmo or Cash App. But of course, there are many ways to support me. By praying for this ministry, sharing the content on social media, or simply spreading the word about what I do. Every bit of support goes a long way in helping me fulfill my mission. Once again, thank you for joining me today. Your presence and engagement enrich these discussions, and together, we're on a journey to strengthen our faith and share the good news with others. Stay tuned for more exciting book studies, thought-provoking discussions, and opportunities to grow your Christian apologetics journey. I look forward to seeing you again.